I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Earlier in the week, the DC Disciplinary Board had made the preliminary ruling that Rudy Giuliani had violated his ethical obligations by bringing a frivolous lawsuit on behalf of Donald Trump in Pennsylvania to try to set aside over 1 million votes in the state. The case was completely and utterly without merit, as the district court judge had called it. It was like a Frankensteinian nightmare of a lawsuit in terms of just how sloppy and riddled with lies and falsehoods it was. And the Third Circuit Court of Appeals agreed and basically said there was literally no merit at all to the case that Rudy Giuliani brought. And so the DC bar, the DC disciplinary system, brought these ethics charges against Rudy Giuliani. He had about 5 or so appearances as part of the trial about whether or not he'd be able to keep his law license or whether there would be other violations and other penalties. There was a determination that Rudy Giuliani preliminary determination, violated his ethical obligations, which was made this past week. And now the decision will be, what will the penalty be, the likely outcome, what is being requested by the DC Disciplinary Council, the lawyers who are the ones who are prosecuting these charges before the board, is that Rudy Giuliani lose his legal license in Washington, D.C. Now, Rudy Giuliani's main legal license from New York, that the one that was actually active, that's been suspended by the New York Disciplinary Board, the New York State Bar, and that's been suspended since about May. There really hasn't been much other action there in New York. One of the strange things here in DC is that Rudy Giuliani's license was inactive in DC. So why Rudy Giuliani is so focused on his inactive DC bar license is a bit perplexing when he's kind of ducked and dodged and hasn't showed up to other court appearances in other fora. But nonetheless, Rudy Giuliani went through, and it was a complete mess during the hearings before the board. Rudy Giuliani wouldn't even answer like basic questions, like when the DC Disciplinary Council would ask Rudy Giuliani questions under oath, like, did you put your name on the lawsuit that was filed in Pennsylvania? Rudy Giuliani's response would be, well, I want to talk to you about Arizona. Let's talk about what happened in Ohio. And then let's talk about what happened in Pennsylvania. Not quite yet. Let's also talk about what happened in Michigan. Could we talk about what happened in Wisconsin? I want to talk to you about what happened in, and he would just go through all these other states. And then the lawyer would be like, I just want you to answer this question. Did you file the lawsuit in Pennsylvania? And Rudy Giuliani would be like, no. And they would show his deposition. They'd show the complaint with his name on it. And he would say, well, what is that before me? That was a piece of paper. They go, no, that's the complaint. Is that your name? Yes. So it was like a torturous proceeding. But here, I want to show you from the final day of testimony, or the closing part of this disciplinary hearing. This is a video of Rudy Giuliani basically just yelling at the DC Disciplinary Council, the DC Disciplinary Board that's going to be making the decision now about whether he's going to lose his DC legal license, which I think they are going to make that ruling pretty soon. But let me play this clip of Rudy Giuliani. Play it.
There may be another side to this game. I'm unfortunately the lawyer who has to represent the fact that there is another side to this case. And the fact that you advocate that side of the case does not make you a traitor. It doesn't make you any more dedicated to democracy than Mr. Fox is. And I'll put my work to democracy. I'll put my life at risk and the times that I did it for democracy up against Mr. Fox and anyone else's. And for that man to engage in that kind of a personal attack when there was no record of that, and for you to allow him to do that, I consider to be an outrage. And I am personally offended by it. And I don't know what has happened to the defense of lawyers who take on unpopular causes, because that is exactly what I did. And I have more than a basis for 3/4 of the cases that come into your purview for bringing this case. It just happens to be that my side of it is politically incorrect.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, other than that being utterly batshit crazy, Rudy Giuliani's not facing these disciplinary charges for representing an unpopular cause. He is being charged in this disciplinary proceeding with the ethical violations because he brought a frivolous case, not an unpopular case, that the claims that he put in a lawsuit were utterly false, were based on conspiracies, were not tethered to reality at all. No one is punishing him at all for representing unpopular people. I mean, let's be honest, people like Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, they were the top White House lawyers. They represented Trump, but were they unethical because they represented Trump? I could be very critical that they represented him, but they didn't violate any rules of professional responsibility because they did so. No. And by the way, when they were asked to do those things, they didn't do them. They've testified before the January 6th committee about what they didn't do. Same thing with Eric Hirschman, who you may have seen before the January 6th committee. And he told people, don't freaking call me. I want a part of this. I'm not having any part of this. And he would tell some of the other people, he would say, you better have a good lawyer because you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you keep doing this thing and if you don't take my advice not to do it. So there were lawyers who didn't go down this path who, while they represented Trump or the Trump White House, which to me is a horrible thing to begin with, they're not in a path of being charged, but with crimes or with ethical violations because they didn't go past that line. On the other hand, Rudy Giuliani filed frivolous lawsuits, completely made up conspiratorial things to try to undermine the results of a free and fair elections and to utilize the litigation path in concert with all of the other unlawful conduct Giuliani and others were engaged in to try to block the peaceful transfer of power, the peaceful transition of power. And ultimately, what this case in D.C. is about, it's really narrowly focused. It's on the Pennsylvania case. It's on the fact that all of the claims there were done in a frivolous manner, that the federal judge agreed that these were frivolous and Frankensteinian, that the Third Circuit Court of Appeals agreed. It's that simple. You filed a frivolous, vexatious lawsuit trying to undermine the vote of millions of people. That's why it's not about representing an unpopular opinion. And how unhinged is this individual? You know, there was that one moment too in one of the days of the testimony where he looked at his hand and he realized that he accidentally put on 2 watches in the same day. He goes, "Oh, I'm wearing 2 watches right now. How do I stop wearing those 2 watches?" So complete humiliation, complete embarrassment, dangerous, but ultimately seems like the right outcome is going to happen here. Rudy Giuliani is going to lose his DC license. Accountability, people. Accountability. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. And in addition to hitting the subscribe button here, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. You'll love the exclusive content at Patreon. Most importantly, they'll help grow this independent media platform. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, It Wasn't Rigged, You're Just a Loser, at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.